Alright, what's going on, guys? Trey back again here, bringing another video. This one's going to be a reshoot because my last video didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. This one is sort of a response slash my thoughts on Dana White trashing Vadummy, as he calls Vadim, and M1 for how they've handled Fedor and what they did basically in the past. And he pretty much says, by the way, I'll put the link in the description so you can check out the interview. Pretty much that they screwed up and they made a huge mistake by not signing with UFC, and that Vadim basically laughed at it when he was made the offer for Fedor with the UFC, and that saying all kinds of things like they're not laughing now and yada 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 and all this kind of stuff. Um, but and a lot of Zuffa zombies out there are just like 100% like believing everything that Dana White's saying and just absolutely positively behind it, and trying to say that Fedor was ducking the UFC, was scared, yada yada yada, all this kind of stuff. And I pretty much just want to do this video because I think it's totally ridiculous what Dana White is saying. I mean, when you look at it, the UFC, like he's saying that he offered them tons of money. The UFC doesn't offer anybody tons of money. I mean, any of their fighters. You look at Alistair Overeem. I think Alistair Overeem is getting paid right now, and he was probably, his deal is probably somewhat similar to what they were offering Fedor. What they were probably offering Fedor, you'll never find the exact amounts online. No one's ever released those, but there were rumors that he was supposed to get $5 million a fight over 6 fights, which would have been $30 million. That's total bogus, total bullshit. I guarantee you it was nowhere even close to that much. He probably was offered somewhere in the range of $600,000 to $800,000 per fight. That's it. He was probably offered less than $1 million a fight, and they probably were offered a pay-per-view bonus if the fight did so many pay-per-view buys, like over 1 million pay-per-view buys or something like that. He would probably get like I don't know, 4 or 5% or something like that of the pay-per-view revenue. But the thing about it is like M1 Global. Okay, so Fedor, we know for a fact that Fedor owns at least at this point 10%, approximately 10% of M1 Global, at least, maybe more, maybe now it's higher. So that's his stake in the company. Plus, he gets his base salary, so his base wage for any of the fights he does. So, in comparison to owning 10% of that promoting company versus his salary for what he gets paid as a fighter, what he gets paid as a fighter is peanuts compared to a promotion that can actually make some real money. Like, we're not talking just like, $500,000, $600,000. We're talking, you make like M1 Global can make a lot of money with co-promotion. I mean, if they were, let's say with the UFC, they were probably expecting the UFC to split the revenue, because here's what was going to happen. They were going to put on these huge fights with Fedor. So Fedor is M1 Global's fighter, and the UFC has their own fighters, right? So then you sign up for a 6-fight contract. M1 Global was probably wanting to do something like this. The UFC gets about 70% of the revenue, and M1 Global gets about 30% of the revenue. Okay? And we're talking a fight with Fedor, like let's say Fedor versus Brock Lesnar, or one of the top guys in the UFC, Randy Couture, any of these guys. Those pay-per-views would sell like, the amount of revenue would probably be somewhere like 50 million. I mean, it would be a lot of money, and I mean a lot of money. So this is what M1 Global was basically trying to do, and that's fair. That's totally fair, because Fedor has his own following. Okay, what the UFC wanted to do is just pay Fedor just like any other fighter and make tons of money off of him. Whereas M1 Global is like, no, let's do it together, co-promotion. So, and then we will get, so Fedor will get 30%. Obviously, Fedor wants to do that because he owns part of M1, 10%. So that's where the real money would have been at for Fedor to do that. He could have made, tons and tons of money. Like one fight, maybe like, 5 million, something like that. Like a lot of money, not just a little bit, but a lot. Compared to the salary that Zuffa is paying their fighters, they don't pay their fighters very much. In comparison to what the UFC and Zuffa bring in and they make as a promotion for the events, the fighters get paid peanuts, like nothing. The guys on the prelims and the undercard, they get paid not even enough to live on. The guys on the main card, a lot of them, aren't even making more than 100K a year, maybe 50K a year, some of them. The top tier guys, maybe you know, only the most popular ones like the champions, like your George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, these guys, those guys are in the millions. But everybody else is not making that much money. You know, Fedor in his fight in, let's see, what was it? One of his fights in Strikeforce got paid $1.5 million, and that was just his salary, plus whatever M1 Global made, you know, in terms of the revenue for the promotion, if they made any money. So, you know, you can see here that obviously it didn't make sense for them to attempt to, you know, to just get paid like a regular employee, like a regular fighter. That salary is peanuts compared to what Fedor would make when, for example, Munson versus Fedor got 7.5 million views. The revenue from that for M1 Global would have been a lot. Okay, and he says that they're burning money. If they're burning money, how come they're still putting on events? If they're burning money, you know, how are they doing all this different stuff? How are they putting on a fight with Fedor every year and this, you know, and putting on Challenger Series and all these different types of events? I don't understand. You know, I don't understand where Dana White gets this information from, because I've looked all over the internet and I can't find any sources that say that M1 Global is losing money at all. It looks like they're making a lot of money. If Fedor versus Munson, with hardly any advertising, did 7.5 million views, I mean, that is, you know, that's going to pay really well. The pay-per-view sold for $30 each, and I'm sure they got a lot of buys from that, at least probably 100,000 to, I mean, who knows, a couple 100,000. You know, we're talking a lot of money here. We're talking millions and millions. You know, what the UFC and these guys consider to be a lot of money compared to what a promotion can bring in revenue, if they're successful, is nothing. You know, and everybody is pissed at M1 Global and Fedor for not signing with the UFC. Well, why do you think? Because this is what was going to happen. Fedor was the biggest fighter in the world, okay? The UFC was going to take probably 90% of the profit from Fedor's fight against Brock or against one of the other guys, and Fedor was going to be left with, you know, like M1 Global was going to be left with hardly anything. If that, maybe 90, maybe higher, maybe 95% of the money the UFC would get, and then M1 Global would get like almost nothing. So, you know, obviously for them, it made sense to try to run their own business and do it themselves. For Fedor, that's his business. You know, he owns, yeah, he owns only 10% of it, but it's his business. He owns 10% of that. And the business relies on him to fight and to put on these shows. So, to me personally, I don't, like, all these Zuffa zombies are coming out and, you know, supporting Dana White and saying all these things and yada, yada, yada. Now, I mean, who knows in the future if M1 Global is going to continue to do this, if they're going to continue to be successful, or whatever's going to happen. But right now it seems like they're doing pretty well, and right now it seems like they are making money. And like I said, 10% of a promotion's income or revenue is way more than you're going to get paid if that promotion is successful, just as a regular employee or as a regular fighter. People need to understand that businesses make money off of employees, okay? They don't just make money off of customers. They make money off of employees, okay? A fighter is an employee. Just like any other type of business, you have employees. You know, the owner of the company will pay an employee less than that employee is bringing in for them. Now, the percentage of how much less is really what, you know, makes it sort of ethically where the ethical considerations come in. You know, if it's a sweatshop and Nike shoes are being sold for $100, but the guy's only getting paid 7 cents, we've got a problem here. That's not right, right? But with fighters, it's kind of the same thing. You know, a lot of these guys on the cars and stuff are like guys in a sweatshop getting paid almost nothing compared to what the UFC brings in. The percentages sometimes, I guarantee you, are ridiculous. The UFC would never put on an event where a fighter would get paid like 20% of the revenue, 30, 40. If the fighters got paid half the revenue and the UFC got the other half, to me that sounds about fair. That the fighters would get half, the UFC would get half, you know, of the generated revenue for the fights. Does it work that way? No. I mean, I don't know exactly what the percentages are, because they don't. The reason why is because Zuffa does not publish them. They do that on purpose because they don't want the fighters to know that they're making each event. They might be making 10, 20, 30 million dollars, and the fighters are only getting paid like, you know, a couple million in total. You know, I mean, the amount they're getting paid is probably next to nothing, very close to nothing. So that's pretty much my video for now, guys. Just wanted to say a lot of people are knocking against Fedor and believing what Dana White's saying. Dana White is a businessman, a liar. What you guys need to do is you need to go look up what BJ Penn's take on the whole situation and on how Zuffa runs as a business. how they pay employees, fighters, the percentage that they pay, and how much money they make off of fighters. Because when Dana White says that M1 Global made a big mistake and that they offered him yada, 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 I 100% think that's complete BS. I'm sure what they offered him, he's made probably way more money than he would have made in the UFC just in what they did with Strikeforce and M1 Global with, Munson and these guys. He probably made double, 3 times, 4 times, maybe up to 10 times as much as he would have made with the UFC. Guaranteed. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about the situation. And, welcome all Zuffa zombies. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of them that try to say, oh, no, yeah, they probably offered them a lot of money. They're the big show. Dude, they're the big show because they don't pay the fighters anything. That's why they're so wealthy. They have so much money because they're not paying the fighters anything. That's why. Affliction went out of business. They were paying the fighters too much. The UFC does great in business because they don't pay the fighters hardly anything of what they make. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. See you for the next one. Later. Peace.